clarify a couple of things. This video is not an opening to a campaign meant to harass, attack, or even dox and cyberbully any of the people who have this art style. This video is about the problems that I believe that the popularity of this art style has accidentally caused. This video is not made in the intentions of nobody drawing in this art style. You can if you want to. This is just about what the art style has caused. Thank you, and let's get on to my video.
I haven't thought about this topic of discussion in a long time. I remember when it was a super popular discussion in the community, and honestly, although I agreed with people's stances, I had a take on it that I hadn't seen a lot of people take. I most likely would have never had to heard of this subject again if, when searching up art commentary, I hadn't come across a video about this subject saying, "I hate the jelly art style." Now, just to be clear, I don't want anyone going and harassing this person. In my opinion, I didn't like their video. Although I technically agreed with the claim that they made at the very beginning, it seemed that they had a lot of points and a lot of reasonings that made no sense, were inherently contradictory with one another, and was just genuinely not a very well set together video. And, like I said before, it didn't raise any of the concerns I had about this art style. Before I begin with my claim and my reasonings, I'm gonna go and say what this video isn't, because I don't want people getting the wrong idea. So this video isn't about whether this art style is objectively good or bad. I don't believe that there's necessarily such thing as an objectively good art, although I'm sure there are objectively bad arts. This video also isn't necessarily targeted for people who are hobby artists, as in, not to say they don't want to profit off of their art, but as to say artists who don't really want to refine their craft, who don't really care about improvement, they just want to draw to draw. That's not a bad thing, of course. I totally support them and rock on to them, but if that's the case, some of the things I say in this video might not really apply to them. The person whose video I originally saw brought up a very interesting point about how the popularity of the jelly art style meant that everyone was quote-unquote stealing each other's art styles and taking it as a whole to ignore their own lived perspective and just do what they thought was cool, which not only does that not make sense on its own, because if you do end up liking a certain art style, that's obviously going to be from your lived experiences, but also because they ended up making a point at the end that completely contradicted that, saying to study other people's art and to copy parts of what they liked. You can't have both cakes. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So, to start off with my main concern about the jelly art style and why I'm bringing this up in the first place, I'm gonna bring up another art community drama that I'm sure you're familiar with if you've watched even the smallest and shortest art commentary video. It's a hot topic of discussion, and it's the art lore thing going on with TikTok. I don't think I need to explain art lore, to be honest with you. It's such a talked about topic that I just feel like you already know. It's obviously the trend of people finding TikToks of art that they don't find appealing and just straight up bullying the artist and being like, "Art lore, guys, remember when we bullied this idiot with a bad, stinky poo-poo art that we didn't like? Oh my gosh, this is so art lore, this is so important to the community." In reality, although a lot of the stuff that has happened with art lore can be put on the fact that a lot of people who engage in art lore are very much emotionally immature, that being sometimes a lot of the people who I see come in art lore are like 14 years old, and their development was stunned by COVID, so they don't really have that like emotional part of their brain that teaches them to not bully people. But I think it has to do with the jelly art style. Kind of. A little bit. Well, I don't mean to say that anyone who draws in this art style is guilty of it. But there's a reason why a majority of these art lore videos aren't about, say, an artist who's problematic. Maybe they were racist. This isn't about that. It's about the fact that these children felt the need to bully something that they were not accustomed to seeing. We're on TikTok around 2021, 2022, more so 2022 than 2021. That's when the jelly art style really started getting popular on there. And just like all the other art trends that we've seen about art styles, such as say when everyone used to draw in the Steven Universe, or now known as the CalArts art style, became increasingly popular to draw in the jelly art style. A lot of the times, if you were looking at the posts that became immensely popular on TikTok of people's art, 9 times out of 10, that art was in the jelly art style. It was something that we were all so accustomed to seeing. It was jelly art style this, jelly art style that. Everyone wanted to draw in it. Everyone was trying to draw in that art style. It was almost like a ticket to success, because a lot of the art in the jelly art style wasn't necessarily of things that kind of push our boundaries on conventional attractiveness. This isn't going to be a lecture on beauty standards or anything. I swear I'm going somewhere with this. The jelly art style was extremely popular, and with that, the jelly art style really was only well suited to one kind of thing. The jelly art style was never really a full body art. You never really saw a jelly art drawing that was a full body one. You never saw a jelly art drawing, most of the time, that was of a non-female. Usually it was a young, attractive woman being drawn in the art style, and usually it was a bust shot. It didn't go downwards. Because of the limitations of the art style and because of the unspoken rules that it technically had, combined with how this repetitive pattern would be drawn over and over again, the only thing people were seeing on a daily basis when they went to go scroll for art videos on Instagram was this same art style with the same kind of attractive woman with the same bust pose. And even then, not even the facial expressions of these drawings usually changed. It was usually a stagnant face with a neutral expression, sometimes a smile if the artist felt like it. And we need to realize a couple of things about what happens when a person is getting used to seeing something or doing something all the time. As human beings, we hate it, and we have an almost primal aggressive response to whenever our routines or whenever our schedules are broken, because it's something that we are so used to, especially when it involves something that we find entertainment and enjoyment with. So, to give you an example, let's say you become accustomed and enjoy eating the same kind of food every day. Let's say you really love eating rice and beans, because I know I do. You've gone every day for almost a year eating rice and beans for dinner. It's become your favorite thing in the world, and every time you go out to eat, you make sure that they have rice and beans because you really want to eat rice and beans. Eventually, one day, you're gonna go somewhere and there's not gonna be rice and beans, and you're gonna have to eat something that's not what you're used to. And God forbid, it's not even gonna be a dish that you like, even though it's not rice and beans. It's gonna be a dish that you've never tried before, that you've literally never seen, that you've never heard of, and in your opinion, although you haven't tried it yet, it looks a little strange to you. Compared to rice and beans, at least. Now, again, this isn't to say that people who draw in the jelly art style are guilty, just like how people who cooked the rice and beans for you in my example wouldn't be guilty. The guilt is upon how the person reacts to seeing it. And when we combine the fact that the person in the rice and bean example has only eaten rice and beans for a very long time, and the fact that the person who only has consumed and learned to enjoy art in the jelly art style hasn't seen art that isn't in the jelly art style for a long time, and also combined with the additional factor that most of these people are very young and had their emotional development stunted by COVID and haven't been able to process the fact that, yeah, there are real people behind those screens. Do you see where I'm going with this? My main critique with the jelly art style isn't about the art style itself, nor the people who draw in it. My main critique is how the popularity of the art style has conditioned people into hating on anything that doesn't match it. Just as how we've normalized, for example, our Western beauty standards onto others, we start to get primal, maybe violent, aggressive, and disturbed when we see someone just living their life who doesn't match the beauty standards we made up. My second concern with the jelly art style isn't really something I want to focus too much on in this video because it's not my main concern with it, and it's of course a bit nitpicky and subjected by my personal taste. But my second point that I was going to make that, again, I don't want to focus on too long, is that when you draw in the specific rules that the jelly art style normally has, that being that it's only really conventionally young females or bust shots, it kind of stunts your art development in other areas, or instead of saying stunts, I should say it hinders it a little and puts it on pause. If there was one thing I wish I could go back in time and do, it's that I wished younger me would have tried to practice anatomy and poses earlier. I'm still so mad about the fact that for years, I genuinely believed I would never learn how to do poses, I would never learn how to draw hands, and I just decided, you know what, I just want to draw bust shots. I'm just going to draw bust shots. I'm just going to do this because it's easiest for me. And now looking back on it, I probably could have been able to draw the way I do now much younger and much earlier. This is also why I said at the beginning is that this video isn't necessarily for people who aren't really looking to quote-unquote improve their art and just want to draw. They don't really care about that kind of stuff. Because my problem with it is that when you expect yourself to draw in a certain way because everyone in a certain art style group draws the same way, you really put on pause other traits that you could be developing for your art. And it also brings up the question in my mind is, if the people who are drawing in this particular art style who only really draw bust shots and things like that, I have to wonder and I have to ask myself, do they really only draw in this pattern because it's something that they enjoy doing? Or do they do it because it's what's expected and considered normal in this art style community? And are they scared that if they try the experiment with doing different kinds of poses, or maybe even, God forbid, drawing in a different art style, are they scared they might get shunned and become a part of art lore too? So I guess in a way it's kind of become circular, my critique, because although I do truly believe that only drawing a certain type of art will hinder your development, just as how for years, probably about 3 years, I only drew bust shots because I was so scared that I stopped myself from making good progress. And even then, when I look back on what my motivation was for not making it, it's so saddening because it's the thing I talked about before. My main motivation was because I wanted people to validate my art. I wanted them to see my art and I wanted them to like it. I wanted to post it. But I was scared that if I tried to do another pose, if I tried to draw a hand, I would do it badly. I would do it awfully. And I would end up getting bullied for that bad art. And although, yes, of course, I have my reservations and my concerns and my critiques about the art style, I want to take the end of my video to talk about some things that I think are unfair critiques. I think a lot of the critiques that were directed towards this art style when the topic was really popular came out of a place of ingenuity. I think they came out of a place of just wanting to dislike something because they disliked it, and a lot of people just didn't have good advice. And like in this video that I saw before, a lot of the people who gave concerns and their critiques had bad faith critiques that were inherently contradictory, like saying, oh, you can't draw in this art style because you're stealing people's art styles, but then saying, hey, go ahead, find an art style you like and apply it to your art style. I'm sorry, what? That doesn't make any sense. And although, of course, if you were to ask me, would you rather be in a world where artists can't draw even similar to other artists because they'll get harassed for it? Or would you want a world where one art style is really popular and a lot of the people are going to draw repetitively in that art style? I'd probably choose the latter. But even then, just because one thing is bad doesn't make something else not bad. It just means that there's a bad and there's a less bad, which is still bad. Yeah, I'm also aware of the fact that if a lot of these people want to get out of drawing in the jelly art style that they've become so accustomed to, it's gonna take a lot of practice and it's gonna create a lot of willpower. Gonna be really stinking hard to do at first, but when we push ourselves out of our comfort zones and we make something that's totally unique, that's totally true to ourselves, that's totally awesome. And I wish more people weren't afraid to experiment with their art and be in fear that doing so will create backlash, so they have to push themselves back into this conformity box. So, in reality, do I hate the jelly art style? No, and the YouTube title, which I haven't decided on, is probably going to be a red herring title that's like kind of clickbait. Sorry if I end up doing that in the end. But do I think people deserve to draw in a different art style than what is normal? Yeah, I totally do. It's not about what the most popular art style is. It's about what your art style is. And having your own art style is pretty rad. Thank you for watching, and just in case I don't see you again, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. See ya.